Welcome to Voices of Life, a journey through faith, history, and the lessons that shape our world. Today's episode. Did you know? August 11th. Mistakes, decisions, and consequences. 3 stories, 3 moments in American history, each revealing how choices, accidents, and responsibility intertwine. From an explorer wounded by his own companion, to a general who recognized when to withdraw, to a nation defining justice on an isolated island in San Francisco Bay. These stories remind us that history is not only about events. It's about people who made decisions, faced consequences, and discovered grace. And guiding us through these reflections is our host, Pastor David, teacher, historian, and storyteller, a voice of clarity and conviction for a generation seeking truth and renewal. This is Voices of Life. This is Did You Know? August 11th. And now, Pastor David.
Welcome to Voices of Life, a ministry of the Church for Life. I'm Pastor David. Did you know that August 11th has been the date of some fascinating moments in American history? On this one day, we can find a famous explorer accidentally shot by one of his own men, a Confederate general withdrawing from a strategically important Virginia town, and the first federal prisoners arriving at one of America's most notorious prisons. 3 different stories, but each one raises an important question about mistakes, decisions, responsibility, and consequences. Let's go back to August 11th, 1806. Meriwether Lewis and William Clark were nearing the end of their historic Corps of Discovery expedition. They had traveled thousands of miles across the continent, reaching the Pacific Ocean, and were now making their way back toward the United States. Lewis was traveling down the Mississippi River with a smaller group of men. Food was always an important concern, so hunting was part of the expedition's daily routine. On August 11th, Lewis spotted elk and went ashore to hunt. He was accompanied by a member of the expedition named Pierre Cruzet, a skilled fiddler and boatman, but nearly blind in one eye. And then something happened that Lewis probably never expected. As Lewis was preparing to fire at the elk, a rifle ball struck him. The bullet entered his left thigh, just below his hip, passed through and struck the back of his opposite thigh. For a moment, Lewis thought he had been attacked. He feared that a Native American had fired upon him, and Cruzet might have been captured. He returned to his men, called them to arms, and prepared for a fight. But when the men returned with Cruzet, there was no evidence of an attack. Lewis concluded that Cruzet had accidentally shot him, likely mistaking him for an elk because of his brown leather clothing and Cruzet's poor eyesight. Fortunately, the bullet missed the bone and major artery. Lewis and Sergeant Patrick Gass treated the wounds themselves, using simple field medicine and bandages soaked in spirits. Lewis continued the expedition despite the pain, reaching St. Louis safely a few weeks later. Now here's what makes the story especially interesting. Lewis didn't simply conclude, "He shot me, therefore he is my enemy." He tried to determine what actually happened. Was it intentional? Was it accidental? Was someone else responsible? Those are important questions, because there's a difference between malice and mistake. A mistake can still cause tremendous harm, but intent matters when we determine responsibility. Before we condemn someone for what happened, sometimes we need to understand why it happened. That's wisdom and grace in action. Now let's move forward 58 years to August 11th, 1864. America was in the middle of a civil war. The Shenandoah Valley of Virginia was a critical military region, fertile farmland, vital supply routes, and a natural corridor for troop movement. Confederate General Jubal Early had conducted an aggressive campaign through the valley and had threatened Washington, D.C. But now Union General Philip Sheridan was moving against him. Sheridan had been given a major assignment: defeat Early and eliminate the Confederate threat in the Shenandoah Valley. As Sheridan advanced toward Winchester, Virginia, he recognized the situation was changing. On August 11th, Early withdrew from Winchester and moved south toward a more defensible position near Strasburg. It is important to understand that this was not a major battle at Winchester. It was a strategic withdrawal. And sometimes leadership requires recognizing when circumstances have changed. There is a time to stand, there is a time to fight, and sometimes there's a time to move. Early would continue fighting, but the campaign would eventually turn decisively against him. Sheridan defeated Early at the Third Battle of Winchester in September, again at Fisher's Hill, and finally at Cedar Creek in October. Victories that secured the valley for the Union and helped Abraham Lincoln's re-election that fall. The lesson? Retreat is not necessarily surrender. Sometimes stepping back is simply recognizing reality. And that principle applies far beyond the battlefield. There are times when wisdom means knowing when to hold your position, and there are times when wisdom means knowing when to change your position. The challenge is knowing the difference. Now let's move ahead another 70 years, August 11th, 1934. San Francisco Bay, a group of federal prisoners arrive at Alcatraz Island. The island had previously been used as a military installation and prison, but now the federal government was opening a new kind of institution, their Alcatraz Federal Penitentiary. The first shipment brought 137 federal prisoners to the island aboard guarded trains and ferries. Alcatraz was intended for inmates considered especially dangerous, difficult to control, notorious, or likely to escape. Its location was part of the security system, surrounded by the cold waters of strong currents that made swimming to the mainland nearly impossible. Over the next 29 years, Alcatraz became one of the most famous prisons in American history. Some of its most notorious inmates included Al Capone, George Machine Gun Kelly, and Robert Stroud, the so-called Birdman of Alcatraz. The prison eventually closed in 1963, partially due to the high operating costs and deteriorating facilities. But the story of Alcatraz raises a much bigger question. What is the purpose of justice? Is justice simply punishment? Is it the protection of the innocent? Is it rehabilitation? Is it accountability? Or is it restoration? Those are not merely questions for prisons, they are questions for society. And they are also questions for people of faith, because Christianity takes both justice and mercy seriously. The Bible does not tell us wrongdoing doesn't matter, but it also tells us that people are capable of repentance, forgiveness, restoration, and redemption. Accountability and mercy do not have to be enemies. They can coexist, and together they can reflect the heart of God. So what do the three events from August 11th have in common? In 1806, Meriwether Lewis was wounded because of what appears to be an accident. In 1864, Jubal Early recognized that the military situation had changed and withdrew from Winchester. And in 1934, the United States created Alcatraz, a place of extreme restraint for prisoners considered dangerous to society. Three different stories, but they all remind us of something important. Our decisions have consequences. Sometimes we make mistakes. Sometimes circumstances change. Sometimes people must be held accountable. And sometimes we have to decide whether the right response is confrontation, correction, restraint, forgiveness, or simply moving forward. History reminds us that consequences are real. Faith reminds us that consequences are not necessarily the end of the story. Because while justice tells us the actions matter, grace reminds us that people can change. And that may be one of the most important lessons we can take from history. I'm Pastor David, and this has been Did You Know? From Voices of Life. Until next time, keep learning, keep asking questions, and keep looking for lessons that history has left for us. God bless you.
You've been listening to Voices of Life. Today's episode. Did you know? August 11. Mistakes, decisions, and consequences. From Meriwether Lewis's unexpected injury to Jubal Early's strategic withdrawal, to the first prisoners arriving at Alcatraz. Each story reminds us that choices matter, and that grace can still write the final chapter. Pastor David's message calls us to remember. History teaches accountability, but faith teaches redemption. Join us next time as Voices of Life continues exploring the crossroads of history and hope. Until then, stay thoughtful, stay prayerful, and keep looking for the lessons that history has left for us.